Thank you very much for your time this morning, Mr. Terry Ball. Maybe just start with a broad sense of the current state of affairs for workers in South Africa at the moment.
Well, good morning. But you mentioned, up to 50%. But if you include those workers who are underemployed, those who have 1 day's work a week, for example, you only have to work for 1 hour in a week to be regarded as employed, or those who sell a few oranges or sweets on a street corner, they're also, I would regard, as the hidden unemployment. And if you add all those together, very much more than half of the potential workforce in South Africa is now unemployed. It's frightening, it's terrible, and it's leading to the most extraordinary poverty. At the same time, the whole nature of work has changed, and it's changing very, very rapidly, courtesy of machine learning and automation, most of it driven now more and more by artificial intelligence, which has the danger and the potential to make most workers, and that is most of humanity, redundant. Wouldn't need them anymore. So do we need trade unions? We need worker organization, whether we need trade unions in the traditional sense, that they organize workers in permanent work, perhaps in the public sector or in large corporations such as mines, etc. But there's a huge workforce out there that is grossly underemployed and unemployed. And those people are part of, in many cases, the gig economy. The part-time work, this very precarious work where you never know how long you're going to work for. It hasn't quite got as bad here as it has in some parts of the world, and particularly in places in Europe, where people may work an hour a week or maybe 2 days a week. They don't know, from day to day, week to week. That is the changed nature of work, and that's something that trade unions have to try and adapt to. Not adapt to accepting that, because that's an acceptance of the system. The word that the International Labour Organization now uses is trade unions need to revitalize themselves, rebuild worker organization in different ways to cope with different circumstances.
No, absolutely. And I mean, you raise a very interesting point here in terms of the digital life that is beginning to override many things and many institutions of work, this advent of technology and technological advancements. And I mean, without seeing bloodbaths across various sectors, is there a middle ground that can be found? Maybe reskilling certain people and things like that, those who are still employed anyway?
Well, reskilled to what? The point is, if you have a machine doing the job of 20, look at the auto industry, classic example. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when there would be 10,000 men, it's always invariably men only, working on an assembly line. Today, it's a whole lot of robots and a handful of people pressing buttons. So what do you mean by reskilling? The government keeps talking about teaching coding. Well, you don't need that many coders. You don't need that many computer programmers. So the point is, we need to look at the future of work. What kind of work? Is it necessary for us to work 48 or 50 hours or 60 hours or even 40 hours a week or 8 hours a day? Maybe we need 2-day week. But it has to be decent pay and decent conditions as well. And that, of course, runs counter to the entire system. So as long as we have employers and employees, bosses and workers, we're going to need protection for those who are being exploited, because it is within the system in the interests of the employer to maximize profits. And that means cutting back on costs, and labor is a cost. So we need to look at that, and the unions that exist now need to look at this in order to change, to adapt to the 21st century. Not adapt to accepting it, but adapt to the realities that they face now.
When you speak about conditions, there's also the issue that's been raised over the last few months now about foreign nationals working in South Africa and them being blamed for many of the hardships that South Africans would be facing when it comes to the labour market. I mean, your thoughts on this particular argument that's made and the realization that needs to be had here?
Well, this is a classic example of scapegoating. It's a nonsense. Capital knows no boundaries. Workers should not have any boundaries. The nature, all the unions say, workers of the world unite. It's still their slogan. And it's not the workers who are to blame. And there's no difference where they come from. Employers will employ workers for the cheapest possible rate if they're the most efficient workers available. It is up to the unions and up to the Labour Department in this case, when we have decent labour laws, to police the fact that you have employers who are to blame for trying to cut wages, paying below minimum rates, etc. The employers are to blame there, not the workers. And in any event, we do not wish to discriminate against the most exploited group within society, which is the working class, wherever they come from. There are a minority of people in this country, I think it's 1.6 million, it's estimated, out of 60 million, who were not born in this country. So it's a nonsense. It's a convenient scapegoat. And what it does do, it divides working people. And that is only to the benefit of those who benefit, and that's the employers and the employing class.
No, absolutely. I wish we had a little bit more time to ventilate some other issues, Mr. Terry Bell, but we have run out of time. Thank you for the time that you did afford us this morning.